Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to wrap up our ecology unit with the last few slides of notes all about nutrient cycles. So this diagram is something that you may have seen before. This is the periodic table of elements, and what it shows is all the different types of atoms that we know of, all the different substances that we know of on the planet. There are 6 that we care about in biology. The first one is carbon. All life on Earth is carbon-based life. And then oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, and phosphorus and sulfur. These 6 elements make up the bulk of our body mass. So all of the molecules in our body are made of mostly these 6 elements. And these elements are cycled through ecosystems. And we're going to talk mostly about carbon and nitrogen in this. There is a phosphorus and sulfur cycle. There's a water cycle and oxygen cycle, but our main focuses are going to be on the carbon cycle and the nitrogen cycle. So the 3 cycles that we are going to investigate are water, the carbon and the oxygen cycle, they go hand in hand, and the nitrogen cycle. Cycling of these materials maintains balance in the environment. And these elements are cycled among land, the atmosphere, living things, and bodies of water. These are known as sinks. So you might have a carbon sink or something, areas where these different elements or molecules are stored. So the first cycle that we're very quickly going to review is the water cycle. Water evaporates, liquid water evaporates and turns into water vapor. And it will go up into the atmosphere where it's really cold and it'll condense and turn into clouds. And as those clouds get bigger and colder, the water vapor will become liquid again and fall as precipitation. So rain, snow, sleet, etc. And then once it rains, that water can run off. So snow will melt and it'll run off into the ground. Any rainwater will run off into the water in rivers and ponds. And some of that water can get filtered into the ground, where plants will suck it up through their roots. And plants do a process of transpiration, which we'll talk about in a minute, but this is basically evaporation from the leaves. And so the cycle continues. So just as a review, evaporation, the water turns to a gas. Transpiration is evaporation of water through the leaves of plants. So water gets absorbed by the roots, travels up the plant, and then can evaporate through the leaves. You can think of it as like a plant sweating. Condensation, water turns into clouds, and then finally precipitation and rain. Next, we have the carbon cycle, and we can also refer to this as the carbon/oxygen cycle because carbon and oxygen are cycled hand in hand. The 2 cycles are really mirror images of each other because processes that use oxygen from the atmosphere create carbon dioxide and add carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Processes that use up carbon dioxide add oxygen back into the atmosphere. So they're really opposites of each other. So there are 3 major processes that remove oxygen from the atmosphere and add in carbon dioxide. The first is cell respiration. This is how plants and animals use their energy. So cell respiration, you breathe in oxygen and add carbon and create carbon dioxide as a waste product and you breathe it out. And that carbon dioxide goes into the atmosphere. Another way is through decomposition or decay. That will also use up oxygen and add it to the atmosphere. And then finally, we have combustion. This is another word for burning. Combustion reactions, they require oxygen to happen, so they take oxygen away from the atmosphere. And as things burn, they release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And then also volcanoes. Volcanic activity can release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So here in this diagram of the carbon and oxygen cycles, we see that all these arrows pointing towards the atmosphere. We have burning of forests or combustion of forests. We have the burning of fossil fuels like gas and coal and oil will release carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And also keep in mind that as we burn things, that's going to not only add carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, it's going to remove any oxygen from the atmosphere. We see that animals take in oxygen, and when they take in oxygen, they release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And decomposers will use up oxygen and also add carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Major processes that remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and add oxygen are photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is when plants and algae take carbon dioxide and convert it into organic molecules like sugars that they use for energy. And this is also known as carbon fixation. So you take the gaseous carbon dioxide in the air and you fix it into a molecule in your body. You make it a part of you. Um, when plants do photosynthesis, they take the oxygen out of the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and will replace it with oxygen. Formation of fossil fuels will also remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and add oxygen, but this process takes hundreds of millions of years. So this isn't something that can be done within our lifetimes. We can't make more fossil fuels that easily. In the Edpuzzle, please answer this question. Volcanic eruptions add carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Which of the following also adds carbon dioxide directly to the atmosphere? A. Burning a forest. B. Forming fossil fuels. C. Evaporation of a puddle. Or D. The erosion of igneous rocks. The correct answer is A. Burning a forest will release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. In fact, your activity following this Edpuzzle video is all about the wildfires that are happening in California. The last cycle we need to talk about is the nitrogen cycle. And nitrogen is a really important element in order for organisms to make DNA and protein. So we need nitrogen for those two things. Most of our atmosphere is made of nitrogen. 80% of our atmosphere is nitrogen. The problem is that organisms, we can't use it in this form. We breathe it in, we just breathe it out. We don't do anything with it by just breathing it. And so what we need is bacteria to convert it into a form we can use. So the first step for us obtaining nitrogen that we can use is nitrogen fixation. This is when nitrogen in the atmosphere is converted into nitrogen-containing molecules, such as ammonium and nitrates, by nitrogen-fixing bacteria. These nitrogen-containing molecules are able to be absorbed by plants, and those plants use their nitrogen to make organic molecules like DNA and protein. Some nitrogen-fixing bacteria have a very special symbiotic relationship with the legumes. These are types of plants such as soybeans, clover, and peanuts. Um, they have a mutualistic relationship. So they live in these root nodules of the plant. The bacteria get a place to live and they affix nitrogen and make those nitrogen containing molecules for the plant to absorb. So, what about animals? Animals get their nitrogen by eating plants and and other animals. Um, so we can't do anything with the nitrogen that we breathe, but we get all our nitrogen from our food. When organisms die, decomposers return nitrogen to the soil. So all of our nitrogen containing molecules in our bodies gets broken down by decomposers, and then other bacteria converts nitrogen containing molecules back into nitrogen gas, completing the cycle in a process known as denitrification. So this is what the nitrogen cycle looks like. We have nitrogen in the atmosphere, nitrogen fixing bacteria in the roots of legumes and in the soil. They will convert that nitrogen into molecules like ammonium and nitrites and nitrates. Mm, and just nitrogen containing molecules. And these molecules get absorbed by the plant. And animals get nitrogen by eating the plant, and other carnivores will get their nitrogen by eating herbivores. And then when the plants die or when the animals die, decomposers will take that nitrogen and put it back in the soil, where denitrifying bacteria will take these nitrogen containing molecules and turn them back into atmospheric nitrogen or nitrogen gas. Please answer this question in the Edpuzzle pop-up window. The growth of many plants in many ecosystems is limited by the supply of nitrogen. Which of the following groups of organisms plays the largest role in moving nitrogen between the atmosphere and plants? A. Bacteria, B. Earthworms, C. Insects, or D. Protists? The answer is A. Bacteria. Those bacteria are so important into taking that atmosphere from the air and converting it into a form of nitrogen that plants can absorb. Without those nitrogen fixing bacteria, we would not be able to get any nitrogen and we would not be able to make any DNA or protein. So, whenever you see a test question about nitrogen or about nitrogen fixing bacteria, think nitrogen cycle.